Okay, we're starting with 100 grams of starter. That's at least 100. I tend to put a tad bit more. And as you can see, the starter is ready to go. So I stir it up, pour it in the bowl, and then I'm going to add water. I check the water, make sure it's around 100 degrees Fahrenheit, and I'm adding about half of it right now, just to dissolve the starter. And I start stirring the starter until it's fully dissolved. We're going to start off with 250 grams of water with this glass. So that's 250 plus 100 is 350. That's what we're aiming for. And I'm going to withhold 40. I added more water because the rye is a higher grain and demands more water. 3 parts bread flour. Now I'm adding the flour. And this is 3/4 bread flour, 1/4 rye flour. A total of 400 grams. Now I'm adding about 9 grams of salt. That's kosher salt. Now basically I'm just going to stir this up until it becomes a shaggy mass. Adding water intermittently because I know what this should look like. After incorporating all the dry flour into the dough, I cover it up, and it shall stay covered up for 4 hours. But every hour, I'm going to take it and fold the dough in half several times. Here I'm using a bowl of water as lubricant for my hand so that the dough doesn't stick. This is a very wet dough. After folding it about a dozen times or more, I now make sure to cover the dough for at least another hour. Now I'm showing the camera what the dough should be looking like after 2 hours fermenting at room temperature. And now I'm just folding the dough over and over again on itself, trying to build up a very strong gluten structure so that the bread can hang on to air better. I make sure that the top of the dough is pretty smooth so it can hang on to the gases. Cover it up for another hour, and I start folding again. And as you can see, the dough is a lot easier to work with here. It's a bit more pliable, a tiny bit less sticky. So now I'm flouring the table because I'm going to take the dough out and knock out all the air that's in that dough. And then again, I'm going to repeat folding it in half, in half, in half. That's going to build up a really strong gluten structure. I obviously didn't know it at the time, but every time I press the dough down into the table, the camera shakes. But what I'm trying to do here is just make the dough into a smooth, round ball. So I take out a bowl that has a tea towel in it, and you can't see it on the camera, but that tea towel is covered with white rice flour. White rice flour is easier to get off the dough before baking. And what I'm doing here is I'm getting a pinch of bread flour just to put a little bit on the bottom. That's going to be the bottom when I get to baking. Now I'm using generous amounts of white rice flour to sprinkle all over the dough. Now I'm covering up the dough lightly. Then I'm going to put it in a brand new clean garbage bag so that it has room to ferment and rise. And it won't rise by much at all. But just to be sure it's airtight, I double bag it. And now that dough will go in the fridge for 16 hours. Now before I even started brushing off the flour, I had to take the dough out of the fridge and let it sit at room temperature for 4 hours so that it could come to room temperature. And so what you're seeing now is I was dusting the rice flour off the dough. I get the cookie sheet, I flip it over, and now I have to work really, really fast. I really want this in the oven within 60 seconds. So I use my brush and I'm brushing off rice flour because I don't need that on there anymore. And because I want a higher oven spring, I don't want the dough to spread out like a pancake. As you can see, it's already doing it because it's so wet. So I score the top with a knife, and then I'm going to spray it with water. And then it's going to go in the oven for 25-30 minutes at 450 degrees Fahrenheit.